The 7th generation Celica was one of the saddest and most disappointing send-offs in all of car history, and it's mainly because they weren't like the previous generations at all. The Celica was an all-wheel drive, in any trim, it didn't come with a turbo, and it was pretty underpowered stock, even though all the other generations were. So people were a bit upset. However, they were still good for what they were built for, being a first car for a car enthusiast, and here's why. The 7th generation Celica, which I will refer to as Celica for simplicity, was equipped with a 1ZZ FE 1.8-liter inline-4 in the base models, and the legendary 2ZZ GE 1.8-liter inline-4 in the GTS models. The 1ZZ was a bit more economy-based, making around 140 horsepower peak at 6,400 RPM and 127 pound-feet of torque at 4,400 RPM, and was equipped with VVT-i and a redline of 8,200 RPM. The GTS models, on the other hand, had the legendary 2ZZ GE engine. The 2ZZ had an ear-ringing redline of 8,500 RPM. It made 180 horsepower to the crank at 7,600 RPM and 133 pound-feet of torque at 6,800 RPM. And on top of the power bump, it also got the glorious VVT-Li. You could get it either with a 4-speed auto or a 5-speed manual in the GT models, and in the GTS models, you could also get it with the same 4-speed auto, but with a 6-speed manual. So obviously, get the manual no matter the trim. Not only will it be more optimal for speed, due to staying in the power band more and feel more fun, but it is also better for fuel economy, as, you know, having more gears does. The 2ZZ engine was so incredible, so much so that Lotus wanted to supercharge it and put it into their small sports cars, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The reason why the 7th generation Celica is great as a first car for a car enthusiast are many, and all of them are prominent. Let's start with the ones that will make the parents happy, as these are usually the people who buy these cars. This car is pretty good on gas for a sporty car, averaging around 28 to 30 miles per gallon according to owners online. This car is incredibly lightweight, weighing around 2,500 pounds to be exact, just 200 pounds more than an NP Miata. Granted, it isn't rear-wheel drive like a Miata, but the Celica still handles very, very well. It is also very reliable, as it is a Toyota, and most people who know these cars will say that they're not very reliable, but people who really know these cars know that the only issues this car faces are caused from bad drivers misshifting or maintaining high RPMs. This usually tends to happen because teenagers who want to feel the VVT-Li all the time, or want to show off, etc. This leads to the engine burning a lot of oil or starving itself of oil because of all the expansion from the heat of the friction. The interior is pretty sporty, having obvious inspiration from past Toyota sports cars, and the space makes it very practical for a teenager to pick up their friends and run errands with. Well, maybe just one friend, since the backseats aren't really usable. The aftermarket support, while limited, does exist, and as most car guys should know, the aftermarket support is like 50% of a car's power capability. Low support equals more expensive it is to make more power. The car isn't perfect though. The 1ZZ was a very underpowered engine with not much support at all, and could be best described as the anemic 2ZZ. The 2ZZ, while used in many sports cars and also supercharged from factory by Lotus, has a low tolerance for boost due to its very high compression ratio of 11.5 to 1 and low displacement of 1.8 liters. Like any engine, you can make insane power with enough money. You could get forged internals and custom-made parts, and sure, you can make something crazy like 800 to the tires, but you have to seriously want it as it gets incredibly expensive. Not to mention the fact that they never made an all-wheel drive trim like the rest of the Celicas, and front-wheel drive struggles in traction compared to the other superior drivetrains. And while some people do swap the GT4 drivetrains into these cars, it doesn't get rid of the fact that it's still a lot of work and money. This is not to discredit the plethora of good things that this platform has to offer. Most people who mod this car will often turn it into a time attack or canyon carver due to its very low weight and very fun rev limiter. Almost makes it feel like a budget S2000 if the S2000 was front-wheel drive instead of rear-wheel drive. The main complaint and hatred that most people have for this car is that it is nothing like a Celica due to the lack of GT4 trim, which is very important to the Celica lineage since it was a legendary rally car. It's mainly racers and teenagers who have given this car a bad image, which, while understandable, makes the 7th generation Celica very underrated. So while there's a valid reason for fans of the Celica lineage to be disappointed, this car does redeem itself by at least being good at what it was made for. But I think its slightly beefier cousin is even more underrated.
Little mama kill the shit.